Hello and welcome to Alchemy 101, the show that explores all avenues of transformation and aims to offer some useful nuggets that can support us in living in line with nature in a way that's true to our nature. No matter how contrary that might seem, just like this nightingale, the bird that sings out in the dark. I'm JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and I'm delighted as ever that you've joined me today. Later, you'll hear the chat I had with medical herbalist Keren Brynes MacLean about adaptogens. Not to be missed, this one. We were sitting by the sea in the sunshine as we talked, and I definitely learned a few things. Keren always delivers some great information. But first we head to the Adaptogenic Apothecary. That's right, that's the name of a new supplement business run by sisters Jodie and Paris Welton, who have developed a supplement product called Harmony, designed to support women at each stage of their monthly cycle. I asked Jodie first how they came to set up the business.
Yeah, so it was a bit of experimentation on our part. I had got to my early 40s, and thankfully I'd never really suffered PMT in my life up until that point. And I just started experiencing some really classic PMT type symptoms, but they were, I would say, severe looking back, in that they were affecting my day-to-day life. And, you know, things like anxiety, very dark moods, just not feeling at all myself, feeling very, very low. But observing those symptoms, what became apparent fairly quickly was that they were cyclic, and they were appearing at the same day of my cycle every month, like clockwork.
Yeah. So, Jodie, what age were you when you started noticing that?
42.
42, right.
Yeah. So this is 4 years ago now. And yeah, that to me felt a bit strange, because it wasn't just before my period. So when you think of PMT, you assume that would be just before your period, but actually for me that wasn't the case. It was post-ovulation, so it was at the start of the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, and it would last probably 5 or 6 days, and then it would just clear itself. But because it was so severe, and because it was affecting my life, and in particular my relationship with my husband and my energy levels around my children, and Paris and I, we run businesses together, it was affecting everything really. I started researching and experimenting a lot with natural supplements. And I just kind of figured out that actually what was happening to me was probably early, the start of perimenopause.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was too severe to be just a PMT. And because it was cyclic and it was only happening at this time, I thought maybe I need to take something just for that time and not throughout my entire cycle. And I'd stumbled across ashwagandha, which was my first experience of adaptogens. And for me, it was the only thing that really, really worked, that really shifted that mood, really lifted the anxiety out of me. And I tried several things before, but it was ashwagandha that really got my attention. And I thought, okay, this actually does something.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Paris, my sister, you were having your own symptoms, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was probably about 45 then, and I would say that I had 101 perimenopause symptoms that were fleeting as well. So one month I had a burning tongue. The next month I had aches in all of my joints. I had insomnia where I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, like wide awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then drift back to sleep half an hour before I actually had to get up. So
yeah, I think we've all been there, frankly. I think
I mean, that was really uncomfortable.
No, but it's,
to be in that cycle of insomnia as well, I felt like it affected everything, because the next day I made bad food choices, you know, because I was just looking for energy. Yeah. I didn't feel energized enough to exercise. You know, I felt sluggish. I felt like I had brain fog. You know, so, and these symptoms were fleeting with me as well. So maybe they were there for 1 or 2 months, and then they'd go, and then something else would gift itself to me that I'd be Googling at 2 o'clock in the morning saying, what on earth is this? And why am I feeling like this? I did go to the doctors and had all of my bloods checked and kind of like general health check, and everything came back absolutely fine. So my doctor was like, look at your age, you're perimenopausal. Like, this is what it is, you know. So then the discussion with the doctor was, well, you know, HRT. So immediately I didn't want to take HRT and I wanted to look for a natural solution first. And so Jodie and I started sharing our knowledge. Really, she shared ashwagandha with me, which completely stopped my insomnia, and I was like incredibly powerful. And once I'd got on top of the insomnia, I felt like everything could move in the right direction then. And then we started really thinking about our cycles and just noticing actually these symptoms are cyclic. You know, and what can we do to support our bodies in those different parts of our cycles?
And I think what happens when you get to perimenopause, certainly for our experience, those 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. So you have your bleeding, your menstruation, follicular, ovulation, and luteal. In your younger years, you kind of flow through those 4 phases without really noticing. Obviously, you know when you're bleeding, but the other 3, you kind of just glide through and it's no real problem. But I think what's certainly happened to us, when you get to perimenopause, those 4 phases are amplified and you really feel those phases. So I now know, I mean, we cycle track, but I can tell you where I am in my cycle just by leaning into my body and feeling, how am I feeling today?
Yeah.
I can tell you where I am. So I think those 4 phases are always important to women, but more so during those perimenopause years. And we really recommend that women cycle track as a really great place to start to kind of get more in tune with what's going on with your body. And for Paris mentioned, we both wanted to get a natural support for various reasons. So we then found a lady called Sarah Rooney, who is one of the UK's leading medical herbalists, and she specialises with female hormone health. So we met with her a few times and just spoke to her and said, you know, is there is it plausible that these symptoms that we're experiencing are just coming in one phase and then disappearing? Would it be possible to create a supplementation that is very targeted so that you're offering your body the right type of supplement at the right time? So it's a very strategic use of adaptogens. And eventually Harmony was born. Which is the world's first 4-phase menstrual cycle and perimenopause support. So in Harmony, you get a different blend of adaptogens and medicinal mushrooms depending on which phase you're in. So there's one for menstruation, one for follicular, and so on, to take you through your cycle. So we started using it ourselves, didn't we? And found, okay, things are improving. I'm not quite as moody as I once was. I was feeling better in general. My energy levels had improved. Paris's numerous bizarre.
I'm no longer 101 symptoms, which is good. But I think
what do you think you're down to now then? Not 101?
Well, possibly 3. But things like shifted really quickly. I would say within 14 days, I started feeling differently. And actually every phase includes a daily dose of Afron. So Afron is the extract of saffron, and it's got clinical research that shows it improves sleep, it reduces awakenings, it improves mood, it improves energy levels, it decreases the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. So saffron combined with the adaptogens and the mushrooms, working together, they have a synergistic effect where they amplify each other. So if you were taking them individually, you wouldn't feel the same benefit that you feel taking them all together. Very targeted, you know, and very powerful. And we're finding that women who are taking it by about day 14, we tend to get a little message pop in our inbox or on Instagram just saying, I'm feeling back to myself. Like this is really powerful and incredible. We're getting these positive messages from women, which is so amazing.
It really does sound fantastic. And and a bit of a breakthrough in terms of menstrual health. But what's going through my mind as I'm listening to you is how effective would it be for somebody who is not perimenopausal, in other words, a younger woman who also has a really bad time with periods? Does it work for them too?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Zara has done is chosen adaptogenic herbs and medicinal mushrooms that have a harmonizing effect across the whole cycle. So she actually works very closely with women who have, let's say, more severe issues with their menstrual cycle. So women with PCOS or women with PMDD, which is a severe form of PMS or PMT. And over time, we're finding that Harmony actually really works for them by harmonizing the balance of their hormones. So it has got the Afron in it, like Paris was saying, which gives that kind of feel-good factor fairly quickly. And that's clinically proven to do that. So within two to 3 weeks, people generally just feel better anyway. But then if you're taking Harmony daily, what we're finding is over a course of 1, 2, 3 months, other symptoms relating to your menstrual cycle also begin to improve. So that might be PMT, it might be painful or heavy periods, just the kind of normalized symptoms that you associate quite often with the menstrual cycle in general.
Yeah, but then also there's more severe symptoms like depression, real depression that can come over women just before their period. So it helps with that too, you think?
There's no doubt that it does. Afron's got the clinical back data to show that it actually improves mood, reduces anxiety, and lots more beside. And this is one of the things we do say to a lot of our ladies that we work with is there is a tendency for people, when you say it's a herbal supplement, for people to kind of feel like, oh, well, herbs may or may not work, or, I don't know where this belief system has come from in our culture that herbs aren't that powerful. And I think this is one of the reasons Paris and I are such adaptogen fans, is that adaptogens are a special class of herbs. So when we say adaptogens, what we're talking about there is plant-based substances like herbs, mushrooms, and roots, for example. But they have their own classification because they are powerful and they work with your body at a molecular level. And so they actually work to restore balance in your hypothalamic, pituitary, and adrenal glands. So it's the whole of your endocrine system. And the result of that is you are able to cope better with stress. So this isn't, a nice little relaxing herbal tea. This is very targeted, very strategic, scientific use of adaptogens.
And it's
you can see it's targeted because I've got you kindly sent me a box of Harmony to check out, and you have different sachets for different days of the month. So it's a month's supply. And you have different sachets, and you have them. You have the right, almost the right amount for each stage of the monthly cycle. So you've got more of one and less of another, depending on which part of the cycle that they're targeting. And so it really is a targeted approach.
Yes, really targeted. And for us, that kind of makes perfect sense now, retrospectively. Because obviously, if a woman has a menstrual cycle, her body is changing. It isn't static throughout the month. There are different requirements as you go through that cycle. And, I don't think I fully appreciated that until perimenopause, when those changes became very apparent and very obvious. And, supplements, generally speaking, they are, aren't they? They're the same every day, as if we were men.
I have to offer full disclosure here. You did send me, because you've just launched a new product, which is, I think you called it Freedom. You called it Freedom? Yeah. Which is for post-menopausal women. And you sent me, I said I'd test a couple of the blends. So you sent me two to compare, and I did come down in favour of one, which I think was the most popular one as well. Everybody felt better on that one. So it's a Freedom adaptogenic blend, and it is for women who are post-menopausal, because of course you still need support instead of taking HRT, you can get support by taking a blend such as this. And I've got, some of the lovely ingredients in this: cacao, lion's mane, mushroom, cordyceps, inulin, ashwagandha, and the Afron that you talk about, and a few other ingredients. It's just a nice blend to take. And I know you were suggesting taking a couple of heaped teaspoons, adding it to smoothies and, or coffee or something like that. I just do it straight with some warm water. And I think it tastes really nice. But you were saying that a lot of people, I think maybe one of the resistances to herbal medicine is that people don't like the taste. And people are so used to sugars, and they're so used to all these other additives to make things supposedly palatable, that I think that's one of the things that stops people doing herbal medicine. What do you think?
I think that's very true, actually, and it's certainly been our experience, hasn't it, with the feedback from both Harmony and Freedom. And I think what's happening here is there are people who are very used to kind of more natural flavours, who don't generally have processed food in their diet.
Yeah, that's me.
That's you.
Yeah.
Who don't have a lot of processed sugars, so their palate is different to other people, other parts of the population where perhaps processed food and sugar intake is a little bit higher. And what for our own personal experience, very similar to you, I'm okay with the flavour.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm very used to natural flavours. Yeah. So for me, it's no problem to just take the Freedom blend, which I take sometimes, and Harmony, which I take every day. Just in a little bit of water is fine for me. I don't have a problem with that. But we know that some women do find that really difficult. And for those people, we often offer recipes and guidance on how to take it. And we quite often say on our social media platforms, take it with something with flavour if you're struggling. So put it in your coffee or make a smoothie with it.
Make an energy ball with it.
Put it in a recipe.
Oh, that's a nice idea.
Yeah, so there are other ways to take it, but however you take it, just take it.
Time for a short break right now, though. We'll be back with more from Paris and Jodie Welton after this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 here on UK Health Radio with me, JJ, the Practical Alchemist, and my guests today, Jodie and Paris Welton, who had very clear ideas about how their products for the Adaptogenic Apothecary should be. Here's Paris.
We didn't want to put fillers in. We are using a powdered format. We didn't want to create capsules. This has all been considered in the launch of the products. But yeah, it is difficult for some people. But you know what? Like perimenopause and menopause is a real time where women can take a step back and have a look at the holistic side of their health and well-being, so not just thinking I can take Freedom and I'm suddenly going to feel amazing. It is a potent magic powder, but it can't perform miracles. Women also do need to embark upon a journey of addressing stress levels, perhaps looking at exercise, looking at what they eat, little shifts. It doesn't have to be huge, massive shifts, but little shifts in the right direction. And these adaptogens will just help support you in that and put you on the right path.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? People think that they can find the silver bullet and that will solve all ills, but actually it's not like that. You have to look at every aspect of your life because, again, a lot of people just think they can eat junk food and then supplement.
Exactly. It doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
But also, we're living in an age as well where people are heavily marketed to health food in supermarkets. So they're feeling like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm becoming more plant-based. But what they're actually eating is a lot of chemicals and fresh foods, so they're feeling like I want to become a bit more plant-based, a bit more healthy. And then they're actually consuming things that are worse than if they were just eating organic meat.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It's like a difficult time
Mm.
to kind of see through everything. And you've got to really be making conscious choices about everything you're consuming.
People get so attached to their choices though, don't they? And it is a bit of it's a job of education and then habit to get people to
change behavior,
change their mindset and just make that shift. And I feel with the adaptogens, because they're powerful, they're potent, you know, and the saffron in there, it has the power to change your mood and just shift you from one mindset to another. So this whole talk about them amplifying, it spills across into every area of your life, because once you're taking a supplement that really works and you find your sleep improves and your energy improves, your ability to make good choices then also improves. And with something like the adaptogens, because it really pulls you back into that connection with nature. You know, it's so simple really when you think about it. You look at the ingredients of harmony and freedom. It's simple. This is it's pure, it's adaptogens. This is herbs and mushrooms, how our ancestors would have taken them. You know, it is groundbreaking, but at the same time, it's just normal.
Well, you're using things that people have used for thousands of years. You know,
exactly.
We're coming back to the old wisdom, you might say, but you know, people have been using these things for thousands of years for a reason, because they work.
So freedom is for women who don't have regular cycles anymore. So it might be that you're in the later stages of perimenopause and your periods aren't coming regularly. So freedom would then be the blend for you. It might be that you're fully in menopause, so you're not having periods anymore, or you're postmenopausal. And so freedom will work for all of those scenarios. So it comes in a lovely glass jar, doesn't it? We recommend taking 6 grams a day. So we sell it as a 1 month supply. And it's an easier product to take in many ways, because you're not relying on your menstrual cycle. So where harmony works with your menstrual cycle, freedom it's the same every day, because you're not having those regular fluctuations that cyclic women do. And it just provides a really brilliant support for aging, for cardiovascular health, for brain health, for energy, for mood support. It's got the ashwagandha in it. I think we mentioned that earlier, didn't we? For take away that anxiety. It's a very powerful, really lovely blend.
You've obviously got a website, so you have the Adaptogenic Apothecary. Slightly, a bit of a mouthful, but I'm getting used to saying it now. So you've got the website. Do you offer recipes and that sort of thing on the website? I mean, in other words, do you go beyond just the blends that you're selling? Do you actually offer other lifestyle advice and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so we're very active on Instagram, aren't we? There's daily posts on our Instagram, which you will find adaptogenic _apothecary. And we do quite often post recipes and smoothie ideas, try and come up with some inventive ways for those people who are struggling a little bit to take. But like the kind of general lifestyle, we talk a lot about kind of the spiritual connection to Mother Nature. For us, our personal experience with adaptogens is that it has shifted the way that we maneuver through life, I think. Well, firstly, we're a lot calmer because of the herbs. I would say happier.
More tuned into the natural cycle. So we do talk a lot about the lunar cycle as well. And especially as a woman, your body could be following the lunar cycle. So we talk a lot about that connection on our Instagram. We talk a lot about, the cycles of nature. So we're not really tapping into the consumerist cycles as much, that perhaps our world operates on more. And we're trying to very much be tuned into and follow the cycles of nature and talk about that a lot more.
Mm-hmm. There's great gains, isn't there, to be had if you can tune into Mother Nature's cycle. And we talk a lot about grounding on there, yoga, meditation, because all of these practices for us, we found were enhanced greatly by taking the adaptogens. And I think it's a holistic approach, isn't it? And it all goes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And as far as I'm concerned, tuning into nature is imperative. I think it's the only way that we're going to make it through this particular phase of human existence is to really connect more with nature. And so, and again, we seem to have in the modern age, talking about periods, talking about the menstrual cycle, talking about menopause. I mean, when I was younger, nobody even talked about menopause, right? Yeah. It's been so demonized in our culture. We're coming out of that now, though, aren't we?
I think we are, aren't we? I mean, there's certainly been the Davina McCall effect where everybody is talking about menopause.
Yeah.
And you hear women a lot, don't you, discussing the symptoms that they've had.
Yeah.
What we're finding is a lot of the talk and a lot of the space is taken up with HRT being the only real solution, which for many women, of course, it just isn't. For many different reasons, women can't or don't want to take HRT.
Or they take HRT and they find that they just don't get along with HRT. Women are told, you can go on it. If it doesn't work, we'll change this. You can try the gel. You can try that instead. There could be another 5-year journey before women think, actually, let me look for something else. So it's really, really nice to be able to offer something natural that actually works for women.
Yeah, I think we've come on leaps and strides, haven't we?
Yeah, I think so. And it's interesting, isn't it, when you look globally, it's the West that we seem to have lost our way here. There are other parts of the world where HRT is not an option. It's not discussed, not required. Women are just kind of getting on using natural supplements and it's just not even needed because there are other options. We talk about that a lot, don't we? How Western world seems to have there must have been a point in time where we just lost our way and, perhaps it's when the witches were killed, but the wise women just were silenced. And thankfully there's enough of us now, I think, here, and we have a platform and a voice. So we're able to share this knowledge again and start getting that network of wise women helping each other in a natural way.
Definitely. And I think there's a growing interest now, especially over the last 3 years that we've lived through, with a lot of people taking medication that perhaps they wouldn't have willingly, but wouldn't have, gone out and taken, and then perhaps some side effects coming along or not feeling great, that there's been a growing kind of groundswell of discussion about natural products and what can I do to make myself feel better. So that's all kind of working in our favor as well. This movement towards, perhaps, there's a place for pharmaceuticals, of course there is, but also there's a place for your general daily health. If you can tap into nature, for us, that seems to be the best way.
Yeah, and pharmaceuticals don't always agree with everybody. That's been my experience over the years as well.
Mine as well.
Yeah. So it is great that we're developing more and more of these products. I think it's fantastic. And the other thing is that connection to nature, as you're saying. Now, again, if anybody listens to this show regularly, they know that I swim virtually every day in the sea. And that is such a gorgeous connection to nature. And I can tell you, if I'm grumpy in the morning before I go for my swim, I am not grumpy by the time I come out of that water. It washes away everything. It's so beautiful just to release all that tension in the water and, just give yourself to nature for that short time, because we don't stay in very long in the cold water here in Northern Europe. So, it's coming back to that connection to nature in every sense, isn't it? And I think that's really useful. Now, you live by the coast as well. You go down into the sea quite often, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
We do. Yeah, we sea swim. Probably not quite as brutal as where you are, because we are on But we often do cold water dips.
And especially through the winter, we make a concerted effort to get out there more when perhaps our moods would naturally dip a little bit more.
Yeah, you never come out of that sea the same person as when you
don't.
went in. Never.
No,
And
you don't.
I feel the same about the trees. Since the adaptogens, we've been doing quite a lot of tree hugging.
Yes, it's great.
It all just lifts your energy. Yeah. I feel like you're vibing on a totally different frequency once you've made that connection. Yeah. And it's hard to put that into words. And it quite often, we joke, don't we, that quite often you feel like you're being really rebellious by not following what mass media is prescribing to you daily, and by doing your own thing and taking it into your own hands. And it's funny that doing something as simple and natural feels like you're breaking rules in some way. It's a strange place we found ourselves in, but here we are.
And it's changing, and people like you are helping bring about the change, I think. And just tell us where people can find out more about you, more about the products, and get some of the information that you have on your website.
Yeah, so the best place to go would be our website. So it's the adaptogenicapothecary.com. And if you're on Instagram or Facebook, you'll also find us on there. We do daily posts on both of those platforms.
Excellent. And the posts that you do on those platforms are, a bit of a lifestyle advice, that kind of thing, is it?
Yeah, it's everything. Lifestyle, food, adaptogens, ingredients. So we talk a lot about the benefits of the different ingredients that we use, which perhaps people might not know, especially mushrooms. We get a lot of engagement on the mushroom posts.
One thing we do encourage is just read the ingredients. If you're thinking about buying a supplement for perimenopause or for menopause, just really look at those ingredients and ask yourself, every single one, what proportion of that ingredient is in there, firstly. So is it enough to make a difference? And is it necessary? And just Google it. Just Google what those ingredients are and what they do. Are there side effects? Are they fillers? Is there caffeine?
It's a really good point, actually, because obviously things like turmeric have become really trendy, haven't they? Like turmeric dropped into lots of different products, turmeric tea, for example. Well, the amount of turmeric that's in that tea is not really going to make a difference to you. Okay, it's going to make your tea yellow, but apart from that, you're not going to feel benefit from it. And I think sometimes people take those and they think, oh, it doesn't do anything, and it puts them off. Then
girls after my own heart there. Thank you so much. Great advice. Read the labels. I am, and have been for many years, an avid labels reader. You'll see me in shops anywhere, just with the product in my hand, reading all the labels and then putting it back on the shelf. It's not going to work. So it's been a delight to have you on the show today. Thank you so much, Paris and Jodie. And good luck with the business. I think it's great. It's great that you've created these products to help people and re-establish this connection with the natural world as our healer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, I love hearing about modern ways of benefiting from traditional medicines. And we'll have more of that in a moment from medical herbalist and friend of the show, Keren Brynes MacLean. First, it's time to hear this from our station sponsors.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And you're listening to Alchemy 101 on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Now, still on the subject of adaptogens, I hadn't really thought about where they come from and how few are native to the UK. Medical herbalist Keren Brynes MacLean, though, full of great information as ever, was happy to fill me in. We recorded this chat just before having lunch at a seaside restaurant. The tide was in, so you'll hear a lot of background noise from the waves on the rocks. But I think we just about managed to be heard over it. Here's Keren on our indigenous adaptogenic herbs.
Yeah, there's not so many that I use in my herbal medicine practice that come from the UK. They tend to come from warmer climates, and it was really interesting sitting down with you to have this conversation today. And it really struck me, here we are in the heat. It is, it's quite a melting temperature. And I have to say, my Peely Wally white legs are soaking up the vitamin D, which is fantastic.
Yep.
But yeah, we tend not to have that many indigenous adaptogens. They tend to come from Asia or India, South America. And I just wonder whether living in a hotter climate, do we need more adaptogenic support? Probably physically, we need more adaptogenic support living in heat. But I think in our modern world, we probably all need some adaptogenic support now and again, because adaptogenic herbs increase our resilience to deal with both physiological stress and emotional stress. And let's face it, the world feels like a stressful place just now.
It does, yeah, it does. So then I'm fascinated now to hear what our natural indigenous adaptogens might be.
Well, one of the ones that I would use as an adaptogenic remedy is green oats, Avena sativa. It has, I think, a very gentle restorative effect on the adrenal glands, not punchy at all like your ginsengs and things like that, but really nourishing to the nervous system, and I think a little bit cortisol sparing in how it works, increases stamina as well. Now, green oats is not the same as eating porridge oats. I mean, we all know that porridge oats are good for us, but green oats have that little bit more of an edge, that we are using the whole plant. We're using the stem and we're using the green tops as well, which just seems to give it that little bit of an edge.
So where do you get green oats from then?
Well, you'd have to buy it from a herbalist, unless you can go out and forage for them, but I've never seen any that you could go, and they're not the sort of thing you're going to find grown particularly in the wild. You do get wild oats, but I've not seen them very commonly. Yeah. The other herb that actually would sit really nicely alongside oats is nettle seed.
Nettle seed. I'm not sure if we could hear that because of
that
the waves coming in and smashing against the rocks there.
Yeah.
But yeah, nettle seed. Yeah.
So nettle seed is quite a stimulating remedy. You have to be really cautious about using it. It is quite a strong remedy, but it's an adrenal stimulant, but it's also a really good tonic for kidneys as well. And I've got a number of clients that use it. I'm using it with that have kidney failure, and we're seeing some really good results with it. But I'm looking at tiny doses.
Yeah.
Just a few seeds basically in a day, and you can use them that way. If you're out for a walk, and it's hot and you're flagging a little bit, you can take 2 or 3 seeds off of a nettle plant and chew them, and you'll get a little bit of a lift and a buzz from that.
All right, but they're tiny.
They're
nettle
tiny.
Seeds are tiny.
Yeah, but they're very, very potent.
Right.
If you think the seeds of a plant has all the energy in it to create a new plant, a new life, and so these seeds do come packed with lots of energy.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that any of us have really paid any attention to nettle seeds.
No,
It's not the kind of people see nettles and they just think, "Oh, get rid of those."
Yeah, nettle leaf, great food. You can use it as a rich source of iron and vitamin C. It's very cleansing, but the seeds themselves are very, very potent and very difficult to harvest enough. That's the problem, I think, with nettle seed. How many nettle seeds do you need to make a litre of nettle seed tincture? Yeah. It's actually quite hard to get hold of. I've had to search around recently to get some for my clients. So it's not a commonly used remedy, but it's one that is very, very effective.
Yeah.
So that's 2. The third one I think is quite interesting in that I didn't used to think about it as an indigenous plant. I always thought about this originally coming from Russia, and that's rhodiola.
Oh, right.
And rhodiola, when I first qualified back in mid-90s, nobody was using rhodiola. We were all using St. John's wort, kava and some other herbs for the nervous system, and a bit of Siberian ginseng. But rhodiola started to come into the foreground as a really good adaptogen. There's a Welsh herbal that dates back to the time of Culpeper, and it references rhodiola.
Oh.
It looks like house leek. So it's been used in Wales almost in the Middle Ages. So it is an indigenous.
That's amazing. I never knew.
No, and I didn't know that. I was at this amazing conference 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, it'll be further back when I think about it. It's been pandemic for the past 3 years and whatever. So probably 4 years ago. Really amazing conference in a little Welsh village. And it was at Lampeter, and we were talking about is it Midfi herbalists and there was a gentleman there that was doing a lot of research into Welsh herbal medicine history, and it was him that had come across this in an old Welsh herbal. So it was quite mind-blowing that it was being used way back then, stopped, it wasn't being used for a long time, and then it's come back to us again.
Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? I had no idea about that. And then we talk about nettle being indigenous, but is nettle indigenous? Because I thought that the Romans brought nettle.
Yeah, it probably did. It's been here a long time.
Yeah, it's been here a long time.
Yeah, I'd like to think about it as an indigenous plant because it is everywhere, and it's been here for, a couple of thousand years for sure. So, yeah, I mean, how do we rate indigenous? Where do we say indigenous starts? That's a good question to ask, isn't it?
It is, yeah. But in any case, it grows here.
It grows here very, very readily, as we all know. Yeah. So, just coming back to rhodiola, I think a really good point to look at there is that rhodiola is an adaptogen, but it's not stimulating. It's very calming and relaxing. And I think, when we think about adaptogens, we have to think about the fact that all of these adaptogens have got individual personalities within that group.
Yeah.
So rhodiola, very simple way that I think about it is I feel like it keeps your foot off the accelerator pedal when it comes to stress, and it helps the braking system. So it gives your adrenal glands a chance to recover if you've been stressed for a long time. I think it also helps upregulation of serotonin and dopamine in the brain. So it helps upregulate those really important neurotransmitters. Now, there are other herbs that can do that, and there are other adaptogens that may do that, but there are other adaptogens that do the very opposite. They're quite stimulating. So instead of calming and relaxing you, they're going to fire you up and give you lots and lots of energy. So, Korean ginseng, for example, red root ginseng is a very yang herb. It really increases that sort of fire. It's a very male sort of energy to it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that, has the opposite effect. I've used both of them. I have used Korean ginseng with great success for myself during periods of, when I've been really, really pressured. I find that when I'm taking ginseng, I find it much harder to sleep, but I have lots and lots of really clear, sharp energy. It's not the sort of thing you want to take long term, particularly for a woman, because I think it is too heating and too energetic. But for short spells, fantastic. And then we've got Siberian ginseng, which is much gentler than the Korean ginseng, and I think much more nourishing and much more suitable for women to use. And one I think that would be quite appropriate for menopause. It's a time when actually adaptogens are really quite essential. So one that we can quite safely use at that time.
Yeah. Now, so we've talked about herbs that are indigenous or nearly indigenous. What about other things? What about mushrooms? Are there any adaptogenic mushrooms that grow in the UK?
Well, there's cordyceps. Cordyceps will probably grow in lots of different countries because they are not associated with any particular trees. They're associated with caterpillars. So cordyceps are cannibalistic. No, they're not cannibalistic.
No, they're parasitic, aren't they?
They're parasitic on caterpillars. So, yes, you can get cordyceps growing in the UK. The ones that I tend to use in my practice aren't grown on caterpillars. They're grown in lab conditions on an oat-based mycelium because I think it would be quite gross and gruesome to be trying to grow them on caterpillars.
I tell you, every time I love cordyceps. It's a great tonic, but every time I have it, I think, really? Caterpillars? I don't know. But probably most of the cordyceps that you get hasn't been grown.
They'll be grown on a substrate in a lab. And cordyceps, really, really good adaptogen. That would be my go-to adaptogen when it comes to mushrooms. But you could probably even think about something like reishi as being quite adaptogenic. It supports the immune system. It helps to balance the immune system in both directions, whether you're over allergic or have low viral resilience. It helps with sleep. It's very restorative. So, I guess all the mushrooms could be considered as being adaptogenic. They work as prebiotics. They help our microbiome. Now, we know so much now ties into that healthy gut bacteria. And it's not necessarily about the probiotic supplements we take. It's about the soil that we create within our digestive system for those bacteria to thrive. And funguses to thrive, because something like 25% of our microbiome is fungal, not bacterial.
Ooh.
Yeah, so these mushrooms provide the fungal prebiotics, which can really help that fungal side of our microbiome as well. And, we know that healthy microbiome, healthy energy levels, really good neurotransmitter balance as well. And, I think we could consider, I think, all the mushrooms to be beneficial in that way.
Yeah. Now, you've made an interesting point there, because you're talking about the fungal aspect of our microbiome in our guts. I don't think many people recognize that as a thing these days. And so most people are focused on the bacteria that live in there. But how do we support the fungal side of our immune systems and our gut biome?
Well, we eat mushrooms, and we try and avoid anything that's got antifungal spray on it. So if you think about intensive agriculture, there's a lot of antifungals used. And so, trying to avoid anything that's had any antifungals on it is probably quite crucial to actually encouraging a really good, healthy fungal population in your gut. Yeah.
Well, when you think about how much, as you say, how many crops are sprayed with an antifungal and how much we must have been consuming over the years, it's no wonder people have got gut problems.
Yeah. Throw in a bit of stress, throw in some artificial sweeteners. I mean, they're another killer for the gut, in terms of bacteria and probably fungal population as well. They just rip everything out of the digestive system. And it's very hard to avoid sweeteners. If you want to buy a soft drink, it's really hard to get one that's not got a sweetener in it. And I always say to my clients, you're better with full fat sugar drinks than you are actually with one of these sweeteners.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly for your body's system. Yeah.
And although sugar is not great for us,
no,
it is natural. It's not being produced in a lab, and our body knows what to do with it. Yes, it's going to produce insulin to handle it, but it's a natural substance. Whereas something that's got this big long chemical name, that basically, a lot of these sweeteners work by not being absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream. They stay in the gut, they make you empty your bowels more, and they kill off your bacteria when they're at it.
Yeah, good point. And so then a lot of products that you see now that are calling themselves healthy, they'll have stevia or steviol in there.
Stevia is the least toxic when it comes to your gut bacteria, and it's the one that I think shows the least toxicity. Generally, is much better tolerated. But even so, I wouldn't go crazy on using any particular sweeteners if they can be avoided, because they're always in processed foods. And I guess that's one thing we have to look at, is how much processed food do we eat in our diets. It's a phenomenal amount. I saw a Facebook post the other day where about a book that was being launched, saying that something like 60 to 70% of the average diet is highly processed food.
Ultra processed,
Ultra processed, it's shocking, absolutely shocking. Yeah.
It is shocking, but you can understand why people go for it, because it's easy, and people are time poor these days, and they're stressed, and they don't have the bandwidth, let's say, to start cooking from scratch, which I try to do. And I must say, some days I give myself a bit of a headache doing that, because I just, think I don't actually have the time to do this.
Yeah, I always make the time to do it. The majority
I make the time. I make the time, but
the majority of what we have at home is generally cooked from scratch, and I feel it's such an important thing to do. I find it quite meditative cooking. It's a way of switching my head off. So I use it as a tool to try and bring some balance to a busy mind. And I just see it as being really important. I try and get about 10 different veg into my evening meal, just small quantities of this or that, because, again, the microbiome, really broad range of foods will actually give you a really healthy microbiome, sort of bacteria range. So it's quite important as well.
Yeah, I must admit, I try to do the same. I always have a break and cook myself something to eat. It might be simple, but it's not ultra processed. It's not processed food.
Yeah.
And of course, I have in my cupboard some dried seaweeds and mushrooms that you very kindly gave me after our seaweed expedition recently.
Yes, very different day to day. I mean, it was raining that day and it was cold. This is just the very opposite. And we're moving beyond that seaweed foraging now. We're sort of heading into inland foraging. All the green plants are out there. The nettles are actually going to seed now. So
they are. So it's time for nettle seed.
Yeah, time for nettle seed. Yeah, just be cautious with it. If anyone is out there and wants to use it, then be canny. I know foragers that use cleaver seeds to make coffee, so it's quite stimulant as well. Yes. Yeah,
how big is a cleaver seed, for heaven's sake?
Well, it's quite small. But they're easier to harvest than nettle seeds, I think.
Well, they don't have the stinging properties.
They don't have the sting in them just the same.
No, exactly. Yeah. Oh, well, that's brilliant. So, adaptogens, easy. It's interesting what you're saying about adaptogens or adaptogenic herbs mostly coming from hot countries where we get more stressed in the heat.
Yeah. So we've got, things like Schisandra, which is an adaptogen I use a lot in problems like long COVID. It's called 5 flavors. It tends to be quite neutral in how it works energetically in the body, but it's a really good anti-inflammatory. So I use it in autoimmune conditions, in chronic fatigue conditions. It works very much on the circulatory system. It makes me wonder about hawthorn for us, whether hawthorn would be quite adaptogenic because it's not dissimilar in some of the things that it treats. And then other herbs that I use as adaptogens in practice are raw Rehmannia. So that's a Chinese herb, really, really cooling herb. So I would use it for any excess heat symptoms, very good for night sweats, whether that's hormonally triggered or immune triggered, good for high histamine problems. And then I turn to things like Eleutherococcus, which is Siberian ginseng, and of course, ashwagandha. I mean, ashwagandha is such a
It's an amazing herb.
It's an amazing herb, yeah. And to me, a lot of these adaptogenics, like ashwagandha, like the green oats, like the Schisandra, you could consider them to be almost like foods. They're like superfoods.
Yeah.
Maca powder. There's another one you could chuck into a smoothie.
Yeah, lovely.
These adaptogens tend to be very broad ranging in how they tend to work in the body. They're not symptom specific.
Yeah.
So I tend to think they give you that sort of foundation base level that you can then build a prescription on.
Brilliant, Keren. Well, once again, fabulous information. You're always a mine of brilliant information. Should we go and have lunch now?
Yeah, let's go and have some lunch.
And with that, we've come to the end of the show. I hope some of the fascinating information we've discussed here might help you. Do head over to thepracticalalchemist.uk to find out more about me and how to stay in touch. And join me for more alchemy here on UK Health Radio and the UK Health Radio podcast another time. Until then, it's goodbye from me and that nightingale.